the chairperson, all other members on the other side of the table or the hall, and other persons present, a very good afternoon to you all. Like the MC actually said, I'm here on behalf of my zonal commander, Napti, Lagos Zonal Command. That's National Agency for the Provision of Trafficking in Persons, Lagos Zonal Command, located here in Lagos, covering Lagos, Oyo, and Ogun State. My paper, I was made to understand, is on a gender-based violence in business and workplaces. Though I saw something that mentioned the equity that the sentence. I just saw that here. Then, as you can see, first of all, I want to congratulate and appreciate all women here present on the World Day, on the International Day of Women that was celebrated on 8th of this month. I congratulate you all on behalf of Napti. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy about the team you created from the team that is accelerating action. That's quite interesting. I don't want to appreciate the presence of students who are here because of their age and their most level. We're talking of human trafficking and gender-based violence. Though I'm here to talk on gender-based violence, but from time to time you could see me mention human trafficking because the consequences of gender-based violence are quite common in human trafficking. So, like I said earlier, gender-based violence in work and business places, a paper presented by me on this occasion. Children, hello. Have any of you heard about gender-based violence? You have never heard of it? And you don't know anything about it? That's lovely. You can see that their coming here is very, very important. And I would like to go too low so that they will understand. Otherwise, they may come here and go home empty-handed. So when we talk about gender violence, students, we are talking of gender violence as violence committed against a person because of his or gender. It is also considered as an act of forcing another person to do something against he or her will through violence, coercion, threat, deception, cultural expectations, or economic means. That is according to the United High Commission for Refugee. We also have gender violence entails any harm or threat of harm inflicted on a person because of male-female power imbalances and entrenched means deeply rooted within the society. It is believed to be one of the most pacifist human rights violations in the world, and it occurs in every country across all segments of society. That is according to UNICEF. It is so common in our society. Everywhere you go, not only in Nigeria, in our communities, even right in Lagos, in our villages, is so common. Generally, gender-based violence is any act of violence that results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or psychological harm to any person, including threats of such acts, coercion, or intimate deprivation of liberty, in public or private. In public or private means, as we are here already, we are in public. In private means in our various homes or communities. Both women and men experience gender-based violence, but the most vulnerable are women and girls. And that is also, when you talk about human trafficking, the most vulnerable are women and children. Then when you come between the women and children, the most vulnerable are children. And within the children, the most vulnerable are their children. In our office, we come, if you receive like 10 cases in a month or 20 cases in a month, victims, virtually all of them will be girls, prostitution. Hello? The next slide, please. Then, we now look at forms of gender-based violence. Students, listen very well. This is where you understand what gender-based violence is all about. And we're talking about gender-based violence. We're talking about, they are categorized into physical violence. This includes pushing, beating, strangling, injuring or murder with or without weapons. Are you with me? I'm talking to the group. I'm not saying you shouldn't listen, but I want to pay special attention to them. I know why I'm saying this, possibly, but I think with this program, I'll begin to make arrangements whether we come as school and establish the current vanguard we are establishing right now. That is active vanguard, meaning anti-trafficking in persons and violence against persons. We are doing it in every school. Actually, we have done with the federal schools, secondary schools, now every other school like state schools in Lagos. So to capture you at that particular stage, you know these things and know what to do at that very particular point in time. Then we also have psychological violence itself. This includes psychologically abusive behaviors such as controlling, coercion, economic abuse, and blackmail. When we talk about economic abuse, we are talking of a situation whereby in a relationship, either husband and wife, or somebody living with another person, either as male-female relationship, and the person is controlling, the abuser is controlling the other person in terms of what she acquires or what she has to acquire. That is when we are talking of economic abuse, as well as the issue of blackmail. Then we have sexual violence. It is any act or attempted act that is sexual in nature and carried out without the consent of the victim. That is, in this case, the consent of the victim, the person that has fallen a victim, was not gotten. And that is where you have the issue of such as rape, sexual abuse, and harassment, exploitation, and forced prostitution. And that is why I mentioned earlier that I will be from time to time talk about human trafficking. When you talk about human trafficking, in the process of being trafficked, the issue of rape comes in, sexual abuse comes in, harassment comes in, exploitation, which is the sole aim of trafficking, is always there. Once you don't have exploitation, it's not a case of human trafficking. And I'm happy, I'm quite sure that the organizers of this program did not make any mistake in inviting Napti. I will tell you why we handle human trafficking and gender-based violence captured in Trafficking VAP Act Provision Act. Then, next slide, please. You have also harmful practice. It includes female genital mutilation, honor killing. Do you know what is honor killing? Honor killing is a situation whereby someone is killed. Maybe a girl was killed by a family as a result of bringing shame, or as a result of you asked to marry social person and you refuse to marry, and they kill you, or maybe one particular thing you must have done that they felt is a shame to them. That is when you talk about honor killing. You can still Google and check more on the meaning. Forced marriage, where you force you to marry someone. Then you have also discriminatory inheritance rights, where some people are being discriminated. That is what we mean by harmful practices. Then you have domestic violence. This means any act perpetrated on any person in the domestic relationship where such act causes harm or cause imminent harm to the safety, health, or well-being of the person. It's usually between one person and another within the family, or committed by family members, or people considered as family members living in the same household or not. It could be physical, sexual, psychological, verbal, and economical violence, which is also as economic abuse. Sexual economic violence, this involves excluding a person from participation in society. It may include denial of access to health services, education, work, and denial of civil, social, economic, cultural, and political rights. Next slide. Now, generally, we have consequences of gender-based violence, and some of the consequences include physical injuries, where the person sustains a very severe injury at any part of his body or her body. We have rape and sexual assault that can result in unwanted pregnancies and exposure to HIV or other sexually transmitted infections. That is when somebody is raped, such could come up. We also have complications during pregnancy and birth. You have also social stigma and ostracization. Survivors are mostly subjected to victim blaming or socially ostracized, leaving them at risk of poverty, isolation, and further violence. You also have anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder. All these things come up in the case of human trafficking. Consequences of gender-based violence continued. You have self-harm, depression. In some cases, survivors are forced to marry their perpetrators once some, while some face retaliation for reporting their experiences, as in the case of honor killing. That is where also the issue of honor killing comes in. And I want to let you know also that you are talking about where people are being forced to marry their perpetrator. You see, even right here in our own case, Nigeria, you see in some places where a widow may be forced to marry the brother, and maybe she doesn't want, and that person is being forced. So such things could come under that condition. Then we also have self-harm. I mentioned that. Okay, barrier to women and girls accessing other life-saving services such as food, shelter, and healthcare. Yes, in the case of a woman that was denied of inheritance, she could lose shelter as well, as other things, including even healthcare and food. Next slide. Then now, role of Napti in combating gender-based violence. That is what we do. The National Agency for the Prevention of Trafficking in Persons is the federal government of Nigeria's focal agency in combating the scourge of human trafficking in persons. The agency operates under the Trafficking in Persons Prohibition, Enforcement and Repression Act 2015, TPA Act 2015. Then what do we do? Trafficking in persons is an organized crime that targets people, especially women and children, for exploitative purposes such as sexual exploitation, forced prostitution, forced labor, bonded labor or debt bondage, domestic servitude, child labor, illegal adoption, organ removal or harvesting, child marriage, forced marriage, slavery, and so on. That is the summary of what trafficking is all about, and which, like I told you earlier, and I keep on saying, has some similarities with the consequences or the forms of gender-based violence. Next slide. Okay. Then, again, also the agency operates under the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act 2015, called VAP Act 2015. The VAP Act 2015 was signed into law on 25th May 2015. It empowers the agency to punish persons on violence in private and public life. Like I said earlier, when we talk about private life, we are talking about the one that happens within your family, either by extended family or the nuclear family. Then we talk about public life. It means those that happen outside the family, and that is why we are talking of gender-based violence in business and workplaces. So when you see private, that is the one that happens in the family, but now we are talking of the one that happens in the public. That is the one that covers the issue of business and workplaces. Then the act, which is only operational in FCT, prohibits all forms of violence against persons, punishes offenders, and also provides maximum protection for victims. Remember, I've mentioned the types of violence against gender-based violence, and now the act, I'm telling you that the act prohibits any form of violence, whether psychological, whether sexual, and so on. Irrespective of whichever way it comes, the act is against it, and we get to the point to know some of the prohibitions. The coming into existence of the law brought to a successful conclusion the 14-year-long social and legislative advocacy championed by women's groups and gender activists towards the passage of the law, which is designed to protect women and girls from all forms of violence. Yes. The act is aimed at eliminating violence in private and public life, prohibits all forms of violence, including physical, sexual, psychological, domestic, harmful traditional practices, discrimination against persons, and provide maximum protection and effective remedies for victims and punishment for offenders. What we are saying here, children, hello, is that Napti, apart from fighting the crime of trafficking in persons, and trafficking in persons simply also means human trafficking. When you take somebody from one place to another through the means of threat, deception, transfer, receipt, for the purpose of exploitation, and which comes in forms of sexual exploitation, domestic servitude. Says hello. Do you know the meaning of domestic servitude? You don't know? Do you know about house help? That is domestic servitude. When you employ a child who is less than 12 years is against the law. I pray Amon doesn't have anyone. And if she has one, we will get arrested. But it will not happen. I pray. Thank you. So I'm only just saying this, that apart from knowing about gender-based violence, you need to also know this other aspect, because these are the things we see when you stay in a place. You see children of 12 years, 13 years, 14 years doing prostitution in a brothel. It's quite unfortunate. And you see people being brought in almost last week from people that came from Libya. You see young ones. Again, another set will come by next week through IOM. So they keep on coming. So what we're saying is that Napti also fights gender-based violence through an act that was enacted in 2015. And through that act, we have certain provisions. For instance, now, the act covers most of the prevalent forms of violence that can be categorized into, I mentioned that. The VAP Act 2015 expansively deals with one of the most vexed forms of sexual violence, that is rape, from which existing panel laws protected only females and limited it to vaginal penetration. Let me tell you this. When we're talking about Violence Against Persons Provision Act 2015, it covers both men and women. And like I mentioned to you here, that the first thing there on that act, if you open it, is rape. And that in other laws, when they're talking about rape, they're only talking about female. But this particular act is now covering male and female. It is no more to say that the act has expanded the scope of rape to protect males and to include anal and oral sex as offenses, as well as protect the identity of rape victims. Next slide. Forms of violence in work and business places under VAP Act 2015. So I only looked at those who can, those ones that had to do with business and workplaces. And when you look at them, you have offensive conduct. What does that mean? When a person converts another person by force or threat to engage in any conduct or act, sexual or otherwise, to the detriment of the victim's physical or psychological well-being. That is a very serious offense under the VAP Act. Also, willfully making false statements. When a person willfully makes false statements, whether oral or documentary, in any judicial proceedings under the Act, or with the aim of initiating investigation of criminal proceedings under the Act against another person. Then depriving the person of his or her liberty. When a person deprives another person of his or her liberty, except pursuant to a court order, meaning that it's only when the court says something against you, or maybe under certain condition, according to the court, that your liberty could be curtailed. But outside that, if anybody does it on you while in office, it's against the law according to VAP Act. Then emotional, verbal, and psychological abuse means a pattern, listen children, a pattern of degrading or humiliating conduct towards any person, including repeated insults, ridicule or name calling, repeated threats to cause emotional pain, or the repeated exhibition of obsessive possessiveness, which such a nature will cause invasion of privacy, liberty, integrity, or security. That is what is meant by emotional. You know the meaning of emotional and verbal, psychological. Those that are different from physical. Physical, like I mentioned to you earlier, involve beating, strangling, or beating. But in this case, it's emotional. You know, at times, our attitude are even more serious, are even more devastating towards certain people, certain person. Not only when you beat the person of a person, but the way you behave or the things you say are quite emotional to that very particular person. That's what we are talking about, emotional, verbal, and physical abuse or violence. Then stalking. Who can tell me among the students what you understand by stalking? You should know this one. I know you will know this one. Oya, tell me.
Means following someone around to know what they are doing, either for good or bad, but following someone around, watching the activities daily. Okay, it means following somebody around, like watching their activities.
Okay, she had a very good idea. And you see, sorry, like I said earlier, I wanted to participate in it because if I just flow, it's good as at least she will know that at least she was able to make a contribution today. That they are the most important people here for now, please. So, you are correct. Means watching or loitering outside of a near the building or place where such person resides, works, carries on businesses, studies or happens to be, or following, pursuing, or accosting any person in a manner which induces fear or anxiety. And you yourself, you know, this thing is very common in secondary school. A particular boy will be following up and down. Please leave me. Why are you following me? At that age, it's common. That's why I know at least. So it's also against the law. If you report it as a serious case or your parents report it. But it also happens to adults. Like it's been said here, you are stalking somebody. Either going to where the person works or where she does a business, following her around, all those things, to her own discomfort or his discomfort. Next slide, please. Sorry. Administering substance with intent means when a person intentionally administers a substance to or causes a substance to be administered to or taken by another person with the intention of stupefying or overpowering that person so as to enable any person to engage in a sexual activity with that person. You see these things happen oftentimes when people are being raped. All these things I'm saying are the things that can occur in a business or workplace. Then next slide, please. Political violence, very interestingly, the act also carries a political violence, meaning that an attempted act of violence perpetrated in the course of political activities, such as elections, and includes any of the following acts: thuggery, mugging, use of force to disrupt meetings, or the use of dangerous weapons that cause bodily harm or injury. Do you know the meaning of mugging, students? You don't know the meaning of mugging? Okay, I just captured it the way it is in that place. Mugging means snatching, back snatching, stealing, theft. Where you see people, like even in the election or even as you are going, somebody mugs you and picks your bag or thereabout and runs away, or even your phone. Violence by state actors. In this case, what this implies is that any person arrested without due authorization is violence by state actor. The state actor is the government or a group organization. That is violence by state actors. Then you also have indecent exposure. This means the intentional exposure of the genital organs or a substantial part thereof with the intention of causing distress to the other part. That is the meaning of indecent exposure. Some people do intentionally do that to attract the opposite side. Then pay attention here, especially students. Sexual abuse. You will see more of sexual this, that. Mainly they are different. Sexual abuse, what does it mean? According to the law, the act, Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act 2015, it means any conduct which violates, humiliates, or degrades the sexual integrity of any person. That is sexual abuse. Next slide. Again, you have sexual assault. This means intentional and unlawful touching, when somebody is touching you and you don't like it. Striking or causing of bodily harm to an individual in a sexual manner without his or her consent. This could also happen in office. Sexual exploitation. This occurs where perpetrators, for financial or other reward, favor or compensation, invites, persuades, engages, or induces the services of a victim, or offers or performs such services to any other person. And that is what the Trafficking in Persons Act called exploiting the position of another person. And that takes me to the Trafficking in Persons Prohibition Act. We are not going after prostitutes. Not that we are supporting prostitutes. The act. If on your own you are doing it, that is your business. But somebody is now exploiting you, that is where we come in. And that is what is meant by exploiting somebody's prostitution. Then we have sexual harassment, means unlawful conduct of sexual nature or other conduct based on sex or gender, which is persistent or serious and demeans or humiliates, creates a hostile or intimidating environment, and this may include physical, verbal, or non-verbal conduct. Next slide, please. I will be done in the next few minutes. Sexual intimidation. Listen to these two. Any action or circumstance which amount to demand for sexual intercourse with either a male or female under any guise as a condition for passing examination, securing employment, business patronage, obtaining any favor in any form as defined in the Act or any other enactment. The actual demand for sexual intercourse with either a male, female under any guest as a condition for passing examination, securing employment, business patronage, obtaining any favor in any form as defined in the Act or any other enactment. Again, also, sexual intimidation, next slide, means acts of deprivation, withholding, replacing, or changing of entitlement, privileges, rights, benefits, examination or test, marks or scores, and any other form of disposition capable of coercing any person to submit to sexual intercourse for the purpose of receiving reprieve thereto. Or last, any other action or inaction construed as sexual intimidation or harassment under any enactment. Next slide. Having said all these things, as contained in the trafficking in the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, then what are we doing as an agency established by government? Under what we do, we have what we call 5 Ps. Under the 5 Ps, we have policy, that is policy documents, and then other policy we can initiate. Under that, we have the Trafficking in Persons Law, which also aids us in fighting gender-based issues, because what we see, like I have told you earlier, majority of the trafficked persons are usually girls, young girls, and all the forms of what you see as forms of gender-based violence are always seen in whatever they pass through. So through that same fight against human trafficking, we also covering the issue of gender-based violence. Then we also have the issue of Violence Against Persons Act that came up and it was given to us. We are the one handling it, like I said earlier. Then we have the launching of the National Sexual Offenders Register, which was a bold step to end rape and gender-based violence and other forms of sexual exploitation. It is a documentation of reported, arraigned, or convicted cases of sex violations or abuse as defined by the VAP Act 2015. Then we also have a national gender policy. Napti will eliminate all forms of gender-based discrimination within its operations and activities. Develop this policy for the process of mainstreaming gender in all activities. That's what we do. Next, under prevention, we talk about all strategies like what I'm doing here to carry out enlightenment activities to ensure that people get to know about gender-based violence, the forms, and what to do and what not to do. On that same, like I told you earlier, we have been establishing an active VAP Vanguard. A Vanguard is good like a club where we let the students know about gender-based violence and how to campaign about it within their school, teach among themselves what they need to know and what they need to do. Then we have also protection. This involves rescuing and protecting the rights of victims. Then we have prosecution, which entails arresting, investigation, and prosecution of suspected offenders. Then we have partnership, which is actually what we are doing here. We partner with any relevant stakeholder, just like as we're partnering with people today. Then, like I told you earlier, it's unfortunate, we don't prosecute cases of gender-based violence here in Lagos. The act is only for FCT, but we are free to carry out the campaign. But if any case comes to us as the first respondent, we refer to the Domestic and Sexual Agency of Lagos State. And why we do not prosecute is that there is already an existing law, existing law by the government that handles that covers all these things. But we work together. And also not mean that if you call us on 627 for human trafficking or for this particular one, toll free, we will know what to do and what to tell you. Thank you so much, and God bless all of us.